Hello. I just finished reading Maddie Mortimer's debut novel, Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies, so I want to discuss my thoughts and feelings about this book, and I do have a lot of feelings about it. It's a very emotional novel, and I know there are lots of big fans of this book, and unfortunately it didn't make this year's Booker Prize shortlist, but it is one of the novels from the long list that I was most keen to get to, although I was slightly trepidatious about reading it because of the subject matter. It's a story that revolves around the experience of cancer and about family life, and so it was slightly difficult to read in that way, but I want to say right off, it did really help me process some of my feelings about these things. And I mean, almost everyone will be able to relate to this book in some way. I mean, just because cancer is so widespread, like statistically, someone in your family or very close to you during your life probably will have some sort of experience of cancer, or you might experience it yourself. And I did find that it helped me think through some of the emotions that I've been feeling when I've been confronted with this issue in the past, and also it's a beautiful artistic achievement in how she constructed and wrote this novel, and the use of narrative voice in it is so unique, and it tells a story that's really involving. So the novel is about a woman named Leah who has a recurrence of cancer at the very beginning of the novel, and starts having treatment for that again. She is a writer and an artist that creates children's books that are about the body, to explain the body to children. So this is an area that really interests her, but of course, because of her personal experiences with the disease and wrestling with it over time, she has a lot of thoughts and feelings about it herself. She's also married to a man named Harry, who's an academic, and so her husband is trying to support her in this as well, but he is wrestling with his own issues as well. And they also have an adolescent daughter named Iris, who is going to school and who is an adolescent, and so she is dealing with all of the issues to do with adolescence and school life and bullying and friendships and feelings of alienation, but she's also trying to support her mother. She sings to her and creates paintings for her to try to cheer her up. But then they come into conflict as well as any parent does with adolescents. So it follows their primary story, but it also goes back into Leah's early life and her experiences in childhood, and her relationship to her parents, but also to a young man that became a kind of brother slash lover to her early on in her life, as he was someone that was taken into her household and kind of adopted when she was an adolescent herself. And so we gradually get memories about her early life. But also, like, probably the most notable thing about this novel that a lot of people have been discussing, and why it's can be classified as experimental, although I wouldn't really call this book experimental. It is very easy to read and understand, although there are elements of it which are very thought-provoking and slightly abstract, because there is also interspersed with this elements of this story a narrative voice which is in bold type and which sort of interjects itself into the narrative at various points, and is quite elusive of who the identity of this narrator and bold type is, because at first it seems like the disease itself and is a kind of personification of this cancer and that is traveling throughout her body, and that and it does work on that level, but then as the story goes on, it becomes increasingly cryptic, and it sort of shapeshifts and change and comes to mean a lot of different things. And so like it seems quite natural at first to have a narrative voice for the disease itself, because when we're beset by a disease, we can feel that there's this presence invading our bodies, and so to give it a voice, seems like quite a natural thing. But then it is a part of her in itself, and so some of the ways this book really helps me process my feelings about knowing people who have dealt with cancer and having had people very close to me experience this, is the way that it helps me think about how in some ways we are autonomous beings that are able to control our own lives and our bodies. We can either support and keep our bodies healthy, or we can allow our bodies to deteriorate. That is, we do have a lot of choice over that, but at the same time, there are innate aspects of our physical being which we can't change. First off, there's the process of aging. No matter how hard people try, you can't escape the process of aging, but also of injury and disease, and how this can really impair our lives and our liveliness. And so there is this like duality to all of our existences, and the way this novel looks at that through this multiplicity of narrative voices, and from this really strange, bold typeface narrative which emerges up within the story and gradually over the course of the story comes to consume it much more, does give a really moving perspective on this aspect of all of our lives, and so this voice at some points it seems to, it seems at some point to be very cultured, like both like high and low culture. It makes lots of references to other things, so seems to want to be interacting with the world outside of the body, or it's like processing it in a certain way. But at other points it seems almost like a projection of Leah's psyche, of her feelings of guilt and resentment, and the tediousness of having to go through treatment and battling a disease like this again, even though she's already gone through it before. And then at other points it almost feels like genetics itself, the way that there are aspects of our being which are have been passed down through the generations, and which make up our genetic beings, and so that many of us are predisposed to certain diseases or physical conditions which we can't really escape because we've inherited them. And which we can try to combat, through like exercise or a healthy diet and things like that. But at the same time, we can't escape so many aspects of our physical nature. And it's interesting how this novel tries to explain the body in a number of different ways, or shows how we try to understand the body in many different ways. At one point, there are children in a classroom that try to explain what cancer is, and obviously Leah, with her profession, she's trying to diagram and show the body, but there are so many aspects to our physical existence which can't be categorized and laid out in these diagrams in order to understand it. There are certain physical as- aspects of like the functional nature of existence and the way disease works within a body, that it's very important to understand. But then there is the self, our beings, our the life force within us, which transcends the physical nature of the body, and the way this narrative, through this bold type narrative aspect of the story, shows that there are these aspects of ourselves which can't be contained in this way. And so especially when it got to the end of the novel, I found it so impactful, how it all comes together, and the way this bold type narrative becomes a part of Leah's being itself. I thought was very, very moving. But to get back to the story itself and how it references her early life and her development, a kind of like uneven development, and her relationship with this boy named Matthew that that is taken into her parents' household in a vicarage, and how they become very close to each other at first feels in a way that feels very exciting and nurturing, and that it will like lead her to see a life outside of the somewhat constricted circumstances she's grown up in. But then how Matthew becomes a much more complex character and much more complex force within her life. And part of what I really enjoyed about this aspect of the novel was how it gave me Wuthering Heights vibes. I don't know if anyone else has made this comparison or felt this way when reading this novel, but yeah, I was definitely feeling Wuthering Heights throughout these aspects of the novel. Like, not in any, in quite like a superficial way, of a boy that is taken in from the outside and grows up alongside a girl, and how they have a very close intellectual and physical connection with each other growing up, which grows increasingly tense and poisonous as the years go on. So as how that's portrayed in Wuthering Heights, yeah, it definitely gave me that feeling in this novel, and the way it uncovers the real complexity of that relationship over the course of the novel, I thought was really interesting. But then also, like I said, how that the past and the present intersect in the later parts of the book. You can see how the beginning of our lives and all of the potential of our lives like circle back to life's inevitable end. And it was interesting how Maddie Mortimer commented in an interview that I read on the Booker Prize's website, which I'll put a link to that in the description below, because it's really interesting to hear her describe her inspiration for this novel, and as both personally in her life, because her mother experienced cancer when she was a child, and throughout her adolescence, and her mother died when she was an adolescent. But also her literary inspirations for this book in the way that she structured it, and the way she draws in this almost poetry into the bold typeface aspects of the narrative, and also how especially the later parts of the book were inspired by the film Interstellar, which I hadn't really thought of before, but when I read it in that interview, I thought, yeah, that makes total sense. Although personally, I feel that the ending of this novel works much better than that film Interstellar, Christopher Nolan's film Interstellar, which was quite an interesting film, but I thought particularly the end, it just kind of fell apart for me and was a bit too cheesy, whereas the ending of this novel I thought was very effective. There's also so much about this novel that I thought was very original, and there were multiple scenes that I thought were very striking and memorable in how they're depicted. When you read a scene in a novel that just feels so vivid and real that you just know it's gonna stick with you. Like there's one point when Leah's on a train and there's a group of very like boisterous gross men that are sort of making comments about her and sexual comments about her. And at one point, one of these men actually goes to grope her and discovers that there is no breast there for him to grope, and the startling awkwardness of that situation, like not awkward for her, but for these horrible men that have physically invaded her space, and how that impacts them is very striking. And also, there's a very vivid scene where Iris is at her school, and there's this female bully that kind of collects other children's secrets and then sort of holds them to ransom for that. And at one point, Iris is trying to endear herself to this girl by performing a kind of initiation or stunt in order to endear herself to her. But then the way that this kind of collapses and backfires, and the repercussions of that are so tragic and heartbreaking. And so yeah, I found Iris's character in this story to be very, very moving, just in the process of adolescence itself. The way that's depicted so vividly in this novel, you know, aside from a daughter that is trying to wrestle with all of these emotions of her mother going through this treatment and dealing with all that frustration and anger and sadness, and while also going through the process of adolescence. It's really heartbreaking. And overall, it is just so smart the way that this novel gives different perspectives on the body and our understanding of our bodies and our relationships between the self and the body, but also to language itself, the creativeness and expansiveness of language as almost a living thing in order how we articulate our experiences and ourselves, but also the limitations of it. The mother and daughter are constantly having these kind of plays upon words that somewhat has to do with Iris's homework, and are doing these exercises to do with comprehension, and you know, these kind of word comparisons. You have to draw likenesses between words, but then if you look at these things in a creative way, and like I always hated quizzes and homework like this, because I think I just would, my mind would go to so many different places of different connections you can draw between language that I found it really difficult to answer the question as it was meant to be answered. And the way that Leah and her daughter answer these questions and approach this, I think is so wonderfully shown in this story. And for a debut novel, I think this is such an impressive achievement, what she's done with this. I mean, there were some aspects of like the bold type narrative voice that did at some moments it felt slightly too controlled, as if, you know, it was the author trying to make certain statements or draw on certain references for a specific purpose. But I think for the most part it did feel like it was sort of organic, that it was a natural part of Leah's character that was coming through in this odd sort of voice. And it is an authentic presence in her life that she's inextricably linked to, and so how the story carries that out, yeah, is so well done. So yeah, I think it is a real shame that this novel didn't make this year's Booker Prize shortlist, because I think it is definitely deserving of a place, and I hope more people continue to read it and discuss it, because I think this novel will have a lot of meaning for, like I said, just about anyone, because everyone will experience this at some point. And you know, out of all of the novels on the shortlist, I would say I would have preferred to have this on over Elizabeth Strout's novel, even though both of these novels are very moving. I did just feel that Elizabeth Strout's novels, the narrative is much more conventional, though you could say it is almost deceptively simple in what it's doing, and the way that she delivers her message in this almost conversational way, but is able to gesture at much larger issues that everyone deals with in their life. But I think the artistic way that Maps of Our Spectacular Bodies is constructed, and it does feel so fresh and new, and something really different, unlike anything I've read before. So yeah, this is a great book. I'd love to know if you have read it, if you have any thoughts or feelings about it, if you agree with me or disagree with me, then yeah, I'd love to discuss it with you in the comments below. But yeah, thank you for watching me go on about this book, because yeah, I did just finish it this afternoon, and it's really struck me, and I think it's going to really stick with me for a long time. But hopefully this author will go on to publish more, and I'm really excited to see what she's going to produce next. But I hope you're reading good things, and I will speak to you again soon. Bye-bye.